Bloody well tell me who sent you.
You're a big man, but you're in bad shape. With me, it's a full-time job. Now behave yourself. Right? Good night, Mrs. Brumby.
So after the flower power optimism of the 1960s had finally fallen away and left the UK in the grips of government corruption, letter bombs and embassy attacks, the landscape was set for one of the best British films of the 1970s. And until 1988's little-seen film Stormy Monday, 17 years later, one of the only hard-boiled gangster movies set in Newcastle upon Tyne. Hi guys, I'm Stephen at Real Classic Film Reviews and I'm a huge Michael Caine fan and this is one of my favourite films of his. Please consider subscribing to the channel if you're a fan of classic films just like this one. So 1971's Get Carter was director Mike Hodges' first feature film. He was well equipped for it though. He'd spent many years working on Granada TV's investigative reporting World in Action show, where he admitted to having been exposed to some of the corruption that Britain was trying to keep hidden at the time. Get Carter is based on the 1970 novel Jack Returns Home. It's the tale of a gangster played by Sir Michael Caine, who's been down south working as a strong arm for a London mob boss. But Jack makes his return when he learns about the death of his brother, apparently caused by some kind of drink driving accident. And the film is essentially the investigation of this death and the hard truths behind it, including a pivotal moment and an acting tour de force from Caine that I'll hint at a bit later on. So pretty much as soon as Jack jumps off the train and arrives in Newcastle, he makes himself known in a classic pub scene where he immediately alienates himself from the locals.
Mind a bitter. In a thin glass.
So it's not long before he finds himself embroiled in a series of fights between northern crooks. And to be honest, he's also fraternising with Britt Ekland, who's the boss's girlfriend, so his fate is all but sealed. And of course, the local crime syndicate in Newcastle are none too happy that he's nosing about, and they attempt to send him packing with typically violent consequences.
Are you coming, Jack? It'd be best. Righto, lads.
In fact, the more and more Jack snoops around questioning his brother's friends and associates, the more his initial suspicions of wrongdoing are confirmed. As he steamrolls through the slimy Newcastle underworld, he ends up being pitted against rival factions in an almost Yojimbo / fistful of dollars style power game, taking a break every now and again to bed a new lady or to dish out some brutal violence.
Can I?
As mentioned, Britt Ekland features in an all too brief role as Carter's long-distance love interest. Britt Ekland was reluctant to star in the film initially, but due to financial difficulties meant she couldn't really be turning down work. She doesn't get a great deal to do here outside of a hugely uncomfortable phone sex scene. I love the couple of inept hired goons that are on Jack's case throughout the film. They're given the thankless task of chasing Carter around the Newcastle quayside with ultimately disastrous results.
Stay where you are, Peter. Don't! Don't!
A special mention here goes to the cinematography here, which was by Wolfgang Szosicki. And the film looks bleak as hell, you know, it really captures that sense of the waste and regret coming out of England's industrial towns during that time, and that would last for decades to come. The entire film looks grey and washed out, and it's not the greatest advert for the north of England, but it's a perfect look for a film dealing with like the lowest of the low lives. Also a good counterbalance to many of the glitzy and glamorous gangster films that came before it. The final pretty nasty 30 minutes of the film where Jack's revenge truly takes shape are preceded by a moment of realisation in Caine's character as he stumbles upon a pornographic film that features a participant that he unfortunately recognises. His curiosity slowly becoming shame and then rage as the puzzle falls into place. I mean, this was such a great role for Michael Caine, and A pretty big departure from his previous kind of jolly cockney roles in films like Alfie and The Italian Job. He does such a good job that you still root for him as the hero, even though he spends the film basically mowing down any man, woman or child that stands in his way, as his search for his brother's killer boils over into a bloody mess of abuse and betrayal. I think modern audiences who are used to seeing Caine as a lovable old gentleman may be surprised by his character in this film, coming across mostly stone-faced and capable of both cold-blooded and unconstrained violence.
Christ, I didn't kill him.
I know you didn't kill him. I know!
In Get Carter, sex, drugs and death aren't glamorous, they're a messy and grimy affair. Apparently fancy parties look grubby and people die awkwardly and alone. Featuring a plot hinging on the pornography trade, which was even more of a taboo subject in the early 70s, it was and still is a bit of a nasty little film, but it's all the better for it. Go check it out.
Do you know, I had almost forgotten what your eyes looked like. They're still the same. Piss holes in the snow.